Most women are told from childhood to soften their edges, to make themselves approachable, to smile so the world feels at ease in their presence. But there exists another archetype, rare, magnetic, and misunderstood, the untouchable woman. She does not bend herself to win affection. She does not barter her essence for scraps of validation. She walks with a certain stillness that unsettles the ungrounded man, and with a certain radiance that draws him closer even as he senses he cannot possess her. She is the paradox, the flame that beckons and the fire that cannot be held. Carl Jung would say she embodies the anima in its most refined form, an embodiment of unconscious desire and projection. Men do not simply see her. They encounter in her their own unintegrated shadow, their longings and fears wrapped in the silhouette of her presence. The untouchable woman becomes less a person in their eyes and more a mirror of what they cannot claim within themselves: discipline, sovereignty, and the ruthless grace of self-possession. To them, she is both sanctuary and battlefield. Have you ever wondered why a man may chase you with relentless hunger, only to grow cold the moment you yield? It is because his obsession was never with you as flesh and soul, but with the symbol you represented in his psyche. You stood at the edge of his consciousness, embodying mystery, mastery, and a beauty he believed he must conquer. But the instant you collapse that distance, the spell shatters. The untouchable woman knows this. She understands that her power lies not in playing games, but in simply refusing to collapse her essence for anyone. She does not weaponize absence, but she understands that absence reveals truth. Those who cannot rest in their own being will mistake her silence for cruelty, her restraint for rejection. Yet it is neither. It is her way of demanding that others rise to the frequency of her self-respect. Jung once wrote that no one can become conscious without pain, and those who orbit her will feel that truth in their bones. For in her presence, a man must confront what he lacks: discipline, depth, sovereignty. Perhaps you have felt this archetype stirring within yourself. The quiet refusal to be rushed, the impulse to guard your inner temple, the unwillingness to dilute your truth for the sake of approval. It feels dangerous at first, doesn't it? To be untouchable is to risk being misunderstood, even demonized. People will call you cold, aloof, difficult. Yet this is the very price of liberation. For every insult hurled at you is nothing more than projection. The resentment of those who have not yet freed themselves from the chains of needing to be liked. The untouchable woman does not bow to the tyranny of should. She does not perform femininity as a desperate audition for love. She is feminine in her softness when she chooses, and masculine in her boundaries when she must. Like a stoic philosopher, she holds her ground, unmoved by the fleeting tides of flattery or disdain. Seneca reminds us, "He who is brave is free." And the untouchable woman lives this truth. She is free because she is brave enough to disappoint others rather than betray herself. To the unconscious man, her freedom feels like rejection, but to the man who has done his shadow work, who has wrestled his ego into humility, she is revelation. She awakens in him the possibility of relating without possession, of loving without control. And yet her worth does not hinge on whether or not he rises to meet her. She does not wait. She does not plead. She simply is, radiant in her unavailability to anything that would cheapen her soul. You may wonder, can this archetype be dangerous? Yes. For the woman who does not yet know her worth, dabbling in untouchability can become a mask, a shield worn out of fear rather than truth. Coldness born of wounds is not the same as boundaries born of power. The former isolates, the latter liberates. That is why shadow work is essential. To become untouchable is not to escape intimacy, but to honor it by demanding depth. It is not to deny love, but to refine it into something worthy of your spirit. So when you walk into a room and heads turn, remember, it is not your beauty alone that captivates, but your refusal to be consumed by their gaze. It is the silence behind your eyes, the sense that you belong to yourself first and last. This is the dangerous allure Jung spoke of, the archetypal pull of the anima made flesh, the reminder that the deepest longings of the human soul cannot be possessed, only reverenced. And when you carry this truth within you, you stop asking, will they choose me? Instead, you begin to ask, do I choose them? There is a moment when the untouchable woman ceases to be merely admired and becomes feared. It is the instant others realize that their charm, their persuasion, their promises have no dominion over her inner citadel. She is not seduced by what is common, nor swayed by the glittering illusions of approval. In Jungian terms, she is individuated beyond the gravitational pull of collective expectation. She stands alone yet not lonely because her essence is whole. This wholeness radiates an energy that unsettles those who thrive on dependency. Men, in particular, often project onto her their anima, their hidden longing for union, tenderness, and salvation. They chase her not as a woman, but as the symbolic key to their unconscious. She becomes their obsession, their muse, their torment. Yet when they reach for her as though she is an object, she slips away like smoke, for she knows that being possessed is not the same as being loved, and she refuses to be reduced to a man's unfinished psychological work. She is not the container for another's unhealed shadow. She is the mirror that reveals it. Have you felt this in your own life? The way some men, perhaps even women, seemed intoxicated by your presence only to crumble or lash out when you refuse to be controlled. This is the paradox of your power. You awaken desire but do not satisfy it cheaply. You inspire longing but demand transformation. In your presence, others are forced to confront their own smallness, their own dependence, their own hunger for validation, and this confrontation terrifies them. So they call you difficult, intimidating, or untouchable, as if it were an insult. But the truth is, it is their unconscious confessing its inadequacy. The untouchable woman does not engage in seduction through pretense. She does not manipulate by withholding affection to create scarcity. That is the behavior of those still trapped in ego games. Her untouchability is not artifice, but authenticity. She has simply reached the place where she cannot be bought by attention, cannot be bribed by gifts, cannot be moved by empty promises. Like Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and her thoughts are colored by sovereignty, by discipline, by loyalty to herself. This is why her energy feels like iron wrapped in silk, soft to the eye, unyielding to the touch. There is a deeper layer, however, one that many do not see. Untouchability is not about cold detachment. It is about sacred preservation. She knows her energy is precious, her time limited, her love rare. To squander these on those who cannot meet her depth would be a betrayal of her own soul, and so she guards her temple with vigilance. Only those who approach with reverence, with the humility of a seeker, rather than the entitlement of a consumer, may cross her threshold. Imagine yourself living this way. How would your world shift if you no longer felt compelled to entertain every admirer, to respond to every message, to soften yourself so others felt comfortable? What would change if you realized that not every hand extended toward you deserves to be held? The truth is liberating. You do not owe your availability to anyone. Your worth is not proven by how many chase you, but by how fiercely you protect the sanctity of your soul. This is where Jung and the Stoics intersect. Jung speaks of individuation, the process of becoming whole, integrating shadow and light, male and female, conscious and unconscious. The Stoics speak of self-mastery, of remaining unmoved by external storms. The untouchable woman embodies both. She has seen her shadow, wrestled her wounds, and chosen to emerge not bitter but sovereign. She has trained her mind to rest in its own dignity, like a fortress secure on a hilltop. When others come to her gates, they find her calm, unyielding, radiant. And it is this radiance that both tempts and terrifies. To some, she becomes the ultimate challenge, the conquest that would prove their worth. But this is where many fail, for they mistake conquest for connection. To conquer her is impossible, because she belongs to no one but herself. She cannot be captured, only invited. She cannot be conquered, only respected. Those who seek to dominate her leave empty-handed. Those who seek to honor her may taste the rare sweetness of her trust. And still, she does not wait for saviors. She is her own. If no one rises to meet her, she does not crumble. She thrives in solitude. Nourished by the richness of her inner world, she has become comfortable in her own company, where silence is not absence, but sanctuary. Her solitude is not loneliness, it is sovereignty. And this is why she is so dangerous to the fragile ego. She cannot be manipulated by abandonment, for she has befriended solitude. She cannot be controlled by praise, for she does not crave approval. She cannot be enslaved by desire, for she governs her own. She is free, and freedom, when embodied by a woman, is the most radical force of all. There is an unspoken terror that society carries toward the woman who cannot be tamed. It whispers beneath the judgments, behind the accusations, within the mocking labels. When she refuses to be compliant, she is called arrogant. When she refuses to be submissive, she is called cold. When she refuses to trade her body or soul for validation, she is called dangerous. But in truth, the fear others feel is not of her. It is of the reflection she casts back. For she unmasks the fragility of those who rely on dominance, charm, or control to anchor their self-worth. Carl Jung would remind us that the unconscious resists integration. It resists awakening. And so when someone meets the untouchable woman, they may project their own unresolved chaos onto her. She becomes the villain in their story, the reason for their inadequacy, the symbol of their rejection. But if you look closer, what she truly represents is the call to rise. She is the test that reveals whether others are ruled by ego or by soul. This is why so many feel conflicted in her presence. They want her, but they also resent her. They crave her, but they also fear her. She becomes, for them, the embodiment of the anima at its most elusive, an image not of comfort but of confrontation. To be near her is to feel one's own smallness exposed. And yet, paradoxically, it is also to feel the possibility of expansion. Have you ever noticed how your silence unsettles others more than your words? When you withdraw your energy, when you do not rush to fill the gaps with apologies or explanations, suddenly the mask falls from their faces. Their entitlement surfaces. Their insecurity claws its way out. It is then that you see the truth. Most people are not in love with you, they are in love with how you make them feel about themselves. And when you refuse to serve that role, their illusions collapse. The untouchable woman knows this, and so she does not barter herself for temporary peace. She allows the silence to do its work. She lets others reveal who they are when faced with the absence of her attention. It is here that she separates those capable of depth from those addicted to control. For the man who has integrated his shadow, her presence is not a threat but an invitation. He sees her boundaries not as rejection but as sacred guardrails of intimacy. He sees her independence not as coldness but as clarity. He recognizes that she is not untouchable because she is withholding, but because she is whole. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. The untouchable woman embodies this truth. Her power is not that she rejects others, but that she refuses to reject herself. She has chosen, again and again, to remain loyal to her essence even when the world demanded she fragment. And this loyalty has forged her into something rare, an energy that cannot be consumed, only respected. To live this way requires courage. It requires shadow work, the painful excavation of old wounds and unmet needs. It requires facing the part of yourself that once believed love had to be earned by self-abandonment. Perhaps you remember those days, when you laughed at jokes that weren't funny, when you said yes while your soul screamed no, when you softened your truth because you feared rejection. The untouchable woman emerges only when those habits are burned in the fire of awareness. She rises when you choose the pain of authenticity over the comfort of conformity. And yet, this journey does not strip her of warmth or tenderness. On the contrary, it refines it. For when she gives her love, it is not from fear but from choice. When she offers her presence, it is not as a lifeline to those drowning in their insecurity, but as a gift to those who can meet her in the deep waters of authenticity. Her touch, rare as it may be, becomes holy. Her affection, no longer scattered to the undeserving, becomes a sanctuary. This is why she feels like fire, both warming and untouchable. Imagine yourself stepping fully into this embodiment. Imagine the relief of no longer chasing approval, of no longer shrinking to fit someone's fantasy. Imagine the quiet power of knowing that your worth is not negotiable, not dependent on who notices you, not diminished by who rejects you. This is what it means to become untouchable, not untouchable in bitterness, but untouchable in worth. And when you walk into the world carrying this, you will notice the shift. Some will shrink in your presence, unable to meet your eyes. Others will be drawn like moths to flame, unable to explain why your energy feels different. They will call you mysterious, intimidating, magnetic. But you will know the truth. It is not mystery, not intimidation, it is sovereignty. You are no longer available to what is beneath you, and that, above all, is what terrifies them. There is a sacred rebellion in the way the untouchable woman lives. She has unlearned the lessons that were carved into her since childhood, the whispers that told her to be pleasing, the warnings that told her to be small, the conditioning that said her value rested in her ability to bend. She has dismantled these scripts one by one, stripping away the illusions until she stands in raw authenticity. And in this authenticity, she becomes untouchable not because she is unreachable, but because she is unbreakable. Jung taught that what we repress in ourselves often returns in projection. For centuries, the untouchable woman has carried the burden of projection, painted as the cold goddess, the femme fatale, the heartless siren. Men who cannot claim their own anima see her independence as cruelty. Women who fear their own strength accuse her of arrogance. Society itself brands her as unnatural. Yet these projections say less about her, and more about the collective's resistance to female sovereignty. She is not a wound, but she triggers wounds in others. She is not rejection, but she exposes how dependent others are on being chosen. Have you ever felt this projection? The way others seem to invent a story about you, too aloof, too proud, too unattainable, when in truth you were simply being yourself? This is the evidence of your power. People do not invent stories about those who make no impact. It is precisely because your presence unsettles them that they must explain it away, but do not be fooled. Beneath their criticisms often lies fascination. Beneath their envy lies admiration. The untouchable woman does not explain herself to the fearful. She does not dilute her truth to soothe fragile egos. She does not apologize for the boundaries that protect her spirit. Like Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters, and her reaction is always sovereign. When misunderstood, she does not crumble into self-doubt. When judged, she does not fall into self-betrayal. She remains anchored in the knowledge that her worth was never theirs to define. But sovereignty does not mean isolation. The untouchable woman is not cold marble carved against the world. She is alive, tender, passionate, but selectively so. She knows that intimacy is not measured by how many hands reach for her, but by how few are allowed into her sacred space. To the one who meets her in truth, she is not untouchable at all. She is a sanctuary, a force of nurturing depth, a presence that makes the world feel more whole, but only to those who honor her essence. To the rest, she remains an enigma, an ache, a mystery unsolved. There is a paradox here. The more she embodies her untouchability, the more magnetic she becomes. For human nature is drawn to what cannot be owned. Like the desert longs for rain, the unconscious longs for that which is rare. Her rarity is her allure. Her refusal to scatter her energy makes her energy glow brighter. She is not everywhere, and so she is desired everywhere. But unlike those who chase attention, she does not perform for it. Her magnetism is the byproduct of her integrity. Imagine the freedom of this existence, where your silence carries more power than your words, where your absence commands more respect than your presence once did, where your no holds more beauty than your forced yes ever could. This is the essence of the untouchable woman. Her power lies not in chasing, not in performing, but in choosing. She chooses where to pour her energy. She chooses who is allowed into her orbit. She chooses to honor herself first and make no mistake. This choosing is not arrogance. It is wisdom. It is the wisdom born from wounds that once taught her the cost of self-abandonment. It is the wisdom forged in the fire of betrayal, rejection, and disillusionment. It is the wisdom that whispers, "Never again will I give myself away to those who cannot hold me." She has turned her pain into a fortress, not to keep love out, but to keep unworthiness from entering. Jung would say she has integrated her shadow, the part of her that once feared rejection, that once begged for validation, that once shrank to be chosen. She has faced that shadow and chosen to transcend it, and now she stands as an archetype of wholeness, embodying the dance between masculine boundaries and feminine radiance. She is both flame and fortress, both softness and steel. To those who cannot yet meet themselves, she will always appear untouchable. To those who have walked through their own shadows, she will appear luminous. And to herself, she is neither goddess nor ghost, she is simply free. Freedom is her ultimate allure. For in a world where so many are bound by the need to be wanted, she has chosen the higher path, to want herself enough to let go of the rest. There comes a point when the untouchable woman ceases to be a mystery to herself. In the beginning, her power may feel like rebellion, like a sharp refusal against the chains of expectation, but as she deepens, it transforms into something softer, something truer. She no longer resists the world simply to prove she cannot be contained. She moves through the world because she knows she is whole. The untouchability that once felt like armor becomes her natural state, as effortless as breathing. Carl Jung believed that wholeness is not achieved by denying one's shadow but by embracing it. The untouchable woman has confronted her shadows of abandonment, insecurity, and longing. She has looked them in the eye, neither shaming them nor indulging them. She has integrated them into her being, transmuting wounds into wisdom, and so, What others mistake as cold detachment is, in truth, the serene confidence of a woman who has made peace with herself. To the uninitiated, her stillness feels dangerous. To the insecure, her clarity feels like arrogance. To the entitled, her boundaries feel like cruelty. Yet these are distortions born in the minds of those who cannot fathom a woman existing without dependence. She does not need to be chosen to know she is worthy. She does not need to be desired to feel alive. She does not need to be understood to remain true. Have you felt that shift? The moment when the opinions of others still echo, but no longer dictate your choices? When the sting of rejection no longer pierces as it once did? When the need to explain yourself dissolves into silence? That is the initiation into untouchability. It is not a mask, not a pose, not a strategy. It is the natural outcome of individuation. The flowering of a psyche no longer chained to external approval. The Stoics wrote often of self-governance, of the inner citadel that no force can storm. Marcus Aurelius said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself and your way of thinking." The untouchable woman embodies this truth. Her happiness is not hostage to anyone's affection. Her peace is not tethered to anyone's validation. She has reclaimed her power from the hands of the world and returned it to its rightful place within herself. And yet, in her sovereignty, she is not without love. She loves deeply but selectively. Her touch, once given freely in fear, is now offered sparingly, deliberately with reverence. She no longer mistakes attention for affection, or flattery for respect. She knows that love without depth is consumption, and she will not be consumed. To the one who has faced himself, who has also embraced shadow and light, she offers not resistance but revelation, for to him she is not untouchable at all. She is the rarest form of intimacy, one rooted in choice, not need. The paradox is this: the more untouchable she becomes, the more sought after she is. But the more sought after she is, the less she feels the need to be sought. For her magnetism no longer feeds her, it simply surrounds her. She does not chase, she does not grasp, she does not plead. Her power lies in her ability to release. If someone cannot meet her where she stands, she lets them go without bitterness. If someone rises to her level, she welcomes them without fear. Can you imagine living this way? Imagine how much lighter your heart would feel if you no longer carried the weight of trying to prove yourself worthy. Imagine the freedom of knowing that every no you speak is not rejection but alignment. Imagine the joy of choosing only what reflects the value you already know you hold. This is the rebirth that awaits when you step fully into untouchability. Not a life of cold walls, but a life of sovereign choices. In Jungian language, she has transcended the archetype of the maiden who seeks and the lover who clings, and risen into the archetype of the queen, complete in herself, granting entry only to what honors her. She no longer asks, "Will they love me?" She asks, "Does this love reflect the truth of who I am?" That single shift separates the woman who chases from the woman who chooses, and so she walks with quiet power, not because she resists, but because she belongs entirely to herself. The dangerous allure of the untouchable woman is not that she cannot be touched, but that she cannot be diminished. She is the reminder that true intimacy begins only when two sovereign souls meet, not to complete each other, but to walk together whole. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses. ND